Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Love this thing. Have some coffee here, real quick. Good morning. It is Stacy. We are loving my veteran, and this is walking in my shoes this morning. This thing is like slow to spool up this morning, so I'm gonna have another sip of coffee and wait for Facebook to catch up to us here. Alrighty then. Hi, everybody. It's Stacy. Y'all, good morning. This is Loving My Veteran, and we're walking in my shoes. And as usual, we're not paid counselors. If you need help, reach out and get professional help. And everything is copyrighted to Loving My Veteran. So, lots going on as usual. I finally have a little bit of time now that I can breathe. I got my research done, and I'm like a paramedic again for another 2 years. Woohoo! Um, so sorry I haven't been answering questions and all that good stuff. Pam, I love coffee with you in the morning, as always. Good morning, Sarah. Today, don't forget, in the afternoon, in the evening, depending on what time zone you're in, Stephanie will be doing a little wellness check-in for us, which is always fabulous and tells us how to deal with things. Good morning, Miss Evelyn. She always tells us how to deal with things. I know, right? Stephanie was tough. So I've had a couple of really good meetings. We'll get a definite date and time and be able to announce it ahead of time. But on one of our Let's Talk, AJ Veal from the Shepherd Center for PTSD and TBI will be our guest on one of our Let's Talks in the next upcoming weeks. Their program is phenomenal. And of course, it is also on a grant and free to all veterans. And you don't necessarily have to have a TBI diagnosed, just the symptoms can get you into the program, and it costs you nothing. And it is a phenomenal program. So we're going to have AJ on to kind of explain things and work on how to get off of those medicines. So I'm super excited about that. And he'll be on, and Stephanie, you and I are going to go on a tour as soon as they're getting clearance for the COVID release for us to be able to go on a tour. And I think Pam wants to go. So I'm really, really excited. I'm also in the middle of previewing, good morning, Sunny, a new movie. It is called Normally Prescribed. It is horrible. It talks about prescription drugs and how they work and what they're doing, psychotic drugs, how they're done, and how Big Pharma kind of controls the prescription behind that. So we're going to actually talk about. I'm not going to. We don't have to have a vaccine to go. Georgia doesn't care. We live in its free state. Let's have fun. So, I really want to talk. We're going to talk a lot about drugs tomorrow. I'm going to do some more research on some of these drugs and exactly what happens in our drug situation tomorrow. It is eye-opening, to say the least. So we'll talk about drugs tomorrow. Today, topic that I kind of skirt around, a topic that I don't want to call myself out on very often. It is volcanic eruptions and spewing of the venom. And most of you know that I am a great venom spewer. I put that out there all the time. That when I get to the point of eruption, it comes out and goes, bleh. Okay? Sarah, are they veteran related? Because if they veteran related, I can get them in right now. Okay, I'm just saying. So we'll work on that. Just let me know after we're done. Y'all know that I'm a big fan of. I'm not a fan of, but I tell you this all the time. I spew venom, and we try to get these explosions going on in our head about what happens. Our veteran explodes, we explode, and that becomes this really, really toxic situation. And it goes back to basic communication. And what happens is that we keep all of this stuff bottled up. Good morning, Michelle. We keep everything bottled up inside of us for so long. And then when it comes out, it is like this big, ugly volcanic eruption of some massive amount, and everything negative in our entire world comes spewing out on the table. Okay? So, like, I will, when I spew my volcanic eruption venom, look, I will find things from any dirt I can find comes flowing out of me in the worst eruption known to man. 99% of the time, we are great. When that one thing hits and we get to a point, granted, we have learned to communicate better, and so our explosions aren't so much like pictures and whatever, but it is words, and it is like the worst volcanic eruption you have ever seen. I will find everything wrong. Like, yeah, don't put your socks in the sock drawer wrong. I mean, everything possible wrong. And what does that do? It fuels him to do the same thing. And so we do it. And you know, Stephanie and I are probably, because she says it a lot, Stephanie and I are probably the venom spewers of the bunch. Okay, it just comes out. Like we've just bottled everything up inside. And it isn't necessarily with our veteran, it's just like our whole life. You know, things get bottled up inside and all this stuff comes into our lives. And then when we get ready to explode, it's like this, and it's horrible. And so the veteran does the same thing. You know, they've kept everything bottled up inside and they try to suppress that PTSD and push it back and push back their feelings, and they get a trigger and they push back their feelings. And then all of a sudden they explode. And so then what do we have happen? When one of us explodes, the other one explodes with this really ugly volcanic mess. And it's ugly. So what do you do with it? What do you do with it? How do you stop it? When somebody figures out how to stop it, please inform me, because I am tired of climbing over the volcanic ash in our house at times when I spew this stuff. How do you stop it? Well, there is a way. I mean, it is about little communication. And I didn't realize until last night when this is going on, I didn't realize until last night that there are some things. She was like, oh, I almost spewed this one before I logged on. Yeah. I didn't realize that some of the things I was doing was upsetting him. Well, rather than him talk about it, and I asked him that last night after we calmed down and this morning, why didn't you say something? And he's like, oh, I just didn't want to deal with it. Well, that's what we all do, okay? That's what we all do. We tend to not say anything about it until it becomes to the boiling point, so we don't address the elephant in the room, and then we get so frustrated that we spew it. Or we've addressed the elephant in the room and the elephant doesn't move. And we've addressed the elephant in the room and the elephant still doesn't move. And we've addressed that thing and it still doesn't move. You know, we have these things like, can you please just do something? And whatever that something is. And we say it all the time. And they're like, it's like they have hearing. Like those 3M things that they're suing over because, you know, it does something with hearing loss. Every one of them should win an award because they don't hear what is being said, or they don't listen. I haven't decided which, what is being said. And so when we try to coax that elephant, we keep going over and over and over and over and over again, and nothing happens, and then we blow up because we're to that level that it's like, bleh. And yeah, a lot of times they don't say stuff, and Stephanie points out because they want to avoid conflict. Well, here's your problem. When they say something, and then how do we respond? We spew venom, right? This grossness comes out because we don't, as Carl likes to put it, you don't like to be called out on your shit. And he's right, I don't. But we have that, right? It happens. Yeah, and so I agree with you. It's like selective hearing. If I really want him to hear something I have to say, I say it under my breath as I'm walking out the room, because he can hear that. He may not be able to hear what I say directly in front of him, but if I'm saying it under my breath walking out of the room or 4 rooms over, I think it's like he hears it. It's like he's got some radar thing that just turns up the volume there. And so they do. They hold it in for years, and then they get tired and they want to move out. And I think but we all would feel that way if we held stuff in. We get tired and we spew really ugly venom. It's ugly, And how do we deal with that? We have to learn to manage conflict better. We have to learn to allow ourselves time to talk and communicate. And I didn't realize it until now that we used to get up in the mornings and before I started doing this, and we would sit outside and we would have coffee and we would watch the birds and the squirrels and we'd talk, and we could talk about anything, just coffee and cigarette or whatever, and we talk about anything. Now the way our life has changed, yeah, me too, sister. Now the way our life has changed, because he doesn't sleep good at night, he sleeps later in the morning. So what happens is we pass each other like ships in the morning, and then my day starts and I get tied into something or he gets tied into something. So that time we used to communicate, we don't do that anymore. So we're going to rework our schedule some, where either one, he's going to get up earlier and we're going to talk in the morning, or immediately following this, I'm going to take half an hour, 45 minutes and go spend with him. Because that time we used to communicate is gone. And in that half an hour, 45 minutes, we could talk about a lot of things. Well, we don't do that. So now it becomes this built up anger and venom because, inevitably, when we want to say something important, they are watching TV. Carl is really big at playing a game on his phone, and he listens, but it just annoys the shit out of me that I'm trying to have a conversation and he's playing freaking Candy Crush or whatever game it is because it distracts his mind. I don't want your mind distracted. I want the respect of your full attention. Now he says, I can hear everything you have to say, but I want the respect of your full attention. Or I get wound up from the day and I have a lot going on and I sit there and we're watching TV together and I play a game. Well, what's happened is we're watching TV, we're playing a game, and then we do this and we don't really talk. So, and it's just like sit with the feeling, absorb it, and then let it go. And yeah, it is hard to let it go. When Michelle and I were talking this morning, I said, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to talk about the drugs or the venom. And she said the venom and the volcanic ash spew is really good because it follows the help me bury a body. Yeah, and the problem is, Michelle, is like the elephant keeps coming back. I'm not sure I could dig a hole big enough to put that elephant in, to bury the body, so it's kind of rough. But we do that. We keep everything bottled up for so long, and we don't make time to just talk. And it doesn't have to be bitchy talk. It just needs to be time to talk without anything else in our life. Just talk. When we talk about PTSD, TBI, how it affects us day in and day out and day in and day out, it becomes defining to our relationship and to them. Okay? I know that Michelle refers to Damon's as the PTSD. But even then, when you hear it all the time, the PTSD or the this, when you hear it all the time, it becomes an obsession. So talk about things that are happy. Talk about good things. You're right, we get frustrated because we address the same thing over and over again. And I go back to the Charlie Brown cartoon, at least they haven't, have they taken that off the air? Is that politically incorrect? Because I'm not sure. But remember the teacher in Charlie Brown, all they ever heard her say was, wah, 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 wah. And I think when we start in on a topic and we go over and over and over and over again, even though we want to change and it's not happening, and this topic is right at the top of our list, when we keep doing it, all they do is wah, 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 wah. Okay? And that's all they hear. That's all we hear. We've all kind of learned that when they want to beat the dead horse, we're like, it's just the whole lamb chop thing, right? Or the Muppet thing. And I really do have to learn to stop bobbing my head to the music. But that's how we're learning to cope. But for them, it's this constant wah, wah, wah. So now we've spewed venom everywhere. Right? We have volcanic ash in some states. I don't have volcanic ash. I have pure ass volcanic rock lava pouring out of my mouth. Okay? Yeah, it is referred to as that. And girl, I do it all the time. For Sarah who doesn't know, see, we have a little lamb chop that I just, it's great. So, how do you get over this? How do you get past what you've spewed? How do you get past what they've spewed? How do you make your way through the volcanic ash? Well, some of it is just that. It's just hate, anger, and frustration. Hate, anger, and frustration. It is. We say hateful things, we say hurtful things because the reality is when we hurt, we want somebody else to hurt too. That's a reality. That's humans. That's just who we are. When we hurt, we want somebody else to hurt too. So if you're saying hateful, hurtful things to me, I'm going to spew them back. And it's like a volleyball game. It's like a volleyball game. Girl, if I walk away, he follows me like a puppy. It is awful. And there is that walking. So I have to walk away in my head. But then I do get to that point that I blow up. And there's this shit sitting here. And how do you deal with it? So like for us, we said some stuff last night that were very hurtful in our spewing. And I had to go back through it and play it out in my head and say, okay, what was just hurtful, just to be hurtful? And what did he say that was different that I may do that bothers him? And I'm like, you said this yesterday. I didn't realize that bothered you. And so we talked about it today. That's funny you say that, Erica, because last night when we were having our discussion, our volcanic eruption, he went to me and was like, pushing your buttons, I'm poking you this time. I mean, it was like, and girl, I wanted to go like, boom. Of course, he's way better at that than I am, so I don't do that. But she's going to share. I'm so excited what they've learned and changed to stop the spewing on Wellness Wednesday. I'm excited, Stephanie. I have to, if I don't get it live, I promise I'll watch the rewatch. I always watch it. But you have to stop that spewing. And when we bottle things up, it becomes intense. And a lot of times there are little things we need to address with them. And a lot of times it's just that we can communicate back and forth with each other and let a lot of it go. I know that I would probably say that besides Carl and I learning to communicate, the best thing that's happened in our relationship is the fact that I talk to Michelle every morning. Hands down. Because if we've had a bad day, we vent to each other and we're not dragging them into it. And I think that truly helps me get through my day because I have my vent partner or my person. And so now that we've got this pile of volcanic ash, how are we getting through it? Right? You literally have to get the shot back out or start sweeping. And you have to determine what is real and what is just junk that you've spewed out. And when it is stuff that they said to you, when they said it to you, you have two choices. You deal with it, you address it, or you let it go. And the problem is that I don't let it go. I may not address it right then, but I save it up for my volcanic eruption day. It's like I get excited, right? And I'm wrong for that. But I do it, and I think we all do it. So when it comes time to cleaning up afterwards, pick out what's important. And pick out what's in, not so much what they said to you, but what you spewed out to them. What's important that you address? And what was just hate? And deal with what you spewed out that is important to address. If they spewed out something to you and you don't want to cause a fight, just ask them, say, I didn't realize when I said or when I did. And you know what happened when we did that today? He said, I've only felt that way once or twice, but we were being hateful. I'm like, that's cool. So it is true. You have to pick and choose when you're cleaning up this volcanic ash. And the biggest thing is not to keep re-erupting. But I do it. I do it all the time. I don't say all the time. I used to erupt like daily. Now I erupt like every 6 weeks. And the more stress I have in my life, the more I erupt. That's usually when I have an eruption. I mean, there's a lot going on. You know, there's like the paramedic thing, and there's some stuff that we're working on, and then my doctor called, and then, you know, it's going to be the anniversary of when my granddaddy died, and so it's all right here in my face. And then he had a dear friend pass away, and so this is all going on in all this turmoil, you know, and that's when we erupt. Instead of me going to him and saying, I'm really struggling with whether or not I want to renew my paramedic, and it's really hard for me, and I have a doctor's thing and they said this, and it's really hard for me, and I have this going on, and him saying to me when his friend died 2 days before, you know, I've had a really good friend die. Instead, he just kind of put a box on it, thought he could keep it in, and by that time we all erupted together, and it was ugly. So I think you have to. Oh, that's funny. That is so funny. Don't quit. I smoke regularly. I read a thing today that Winston, who invented the cigarettes, died at 102. I'm okay with that. The guy with the treadmill died at 54. Just saying. I thought it was quite funny, actually. But the attitudes come, and part of it is, again, social skilling. You're going to really find out as we go through this. You're going to really find out when we start getting into the drugs tomorrow. I was floored. I was floored by how much that happened. Our ashes do keep building up. And a lot of times they don't talk. Jennifer, it is a learning process. It is a very slow learning process. But I think where we start and we make our mistake in learning to communicate is we try to learn to communicate problems. We try to learn to communicate issues. And the way I had to look at it was this. If these issues were already going on, and these problems were already going on, and our life was kind of already going like this, and this is what I kind of had going on in my issues, did it matter that they kept going on another 2 weeks, or another 3 weeks, or another month, while I learned to communicate about real other things? Like, oh, look at the baby hummingbirds, or look at the, you know, where we could actually interact in a conversation. Okay? So girl, you ain't lying. But you have to learn to communicate about other things besides issues first. That was a very hard pill for me to swallow. We had to learn to communicate about other things besides issues first. Because if you don't know how to talk to each other about non-important things, you're never going to learn to talk to each other about the important things. That was a big deal for us. That was a big deal for us. Godmother passed away because I haven't talked to her every day. He said this to me. Ooh, girl, I would knock his head off. Do you hear me? Would you like some help with the baseball bat? I don't remember who had the pig farm, but I think we all gonna be loading up and going to the pig farm. It's one of these things that I think that when we communicate and we don't know how to do that well, they also deflect their pain. Deflecting pain is a huge thing. I know that when, like for us, when I have problems in my family structure, not our family structure, but my family structure, the way he responds, a lot of that has to do with his pain of things he hasn't settled with, or maybe he's dealt with, but he wished things would have been different. So a lot of times they deflect their pain in a negative way. And you just have to sometimes suck it up. And it's hard. And why are we always the bigger person? Why are we always the one dealing with it? Why are we always the one who has to suck it up? Why are we always the one? And it's like I thought to Paul, I said, you're not the only one with dates. I'm fucking tired of you. Well, I push my dates aside for you. No, you don't. You get in a spot, and then anything I say sets you off because you're having a date, even though you won't talk about it. And then I do try to talk about it, and it just sucks. And so we get in a spot and we want to scream, what about me? And so when we try to scream our what about me, the volcanic eruption happens and it's there and it's ugly. You know, we all have dates. We may not all have PTSD or a TBI, but we all have dates. We all have moments, and we're allowed to. But learning to get this out, learning to get this out is important. And the best way is to learn to communicate first without communicating the bad. Again, think about it from your side. Us, all about us. We need to think about us. How do we feel when they don't respond to what we ask? How do we feel when they stand there and they belittle us and tell us everything we've ever done is wrong? How do we feel when it is, well, I try to do that all the time with you and you don't do this? How do we feel? Okay? How do we feel? That's how we, you know, when they spew it back, it always makes us hurt. They're not quite ready to understand the other side of that coin. We have that right to say to them because they don't realize sometimes how much what they say hurts us. And when we call them out, all of a sudden they get protective and they get deflective, and everything we try to say to them to call them out and say, hey, this isn't working, becomes, well, you didn't do this yesterday, or you didn't do this last week, or 6 months ago you said this. If we could draw a line and leave the past in the past and move forward with the new place we are today, my life would be so much happier. But when this volcanic eruption happens, y'all, we are digging up shit that I thought was dead, gone, and buried. I mean, it's like man has a backhoe sometimes and just dumps the shit from the septic tank right out there. And Michelle, you're right. It has been hard. And we have to learn to protect ourselves. And we have to learn that, you know what, if their normal is going to be in a moment, if their normal is going to be in that place, let them be there for a day or two, and you have some normal for you. Does it matter that they're in that space? Nope. Then why do we have to argue with them today or tomorrow or about it? Can we just have normal for us? So set your own boundaries in what you need. Does it matter that he's in a funk today? Nope, because I used to think it was my job to get him out of a funk. I am no longer on my plate of responsibilities. You want to be in a funk? Have fun with that. You want to talk about your funk? I'm going to learn to make time for you. And y'all know military time, I've already told you, veteran time is the weirdest thing ever. It is inevitable that my veteran decides that he needs to communicate when I am doing something else important that he knows is coming up. We are going to have to communicate right then. And so I'm patient and I listen for a minute or two, 5, 6, and I got what he had to say. I'm like, good, let's move on. And then he gets the freaking lamb chop out. And we want to discuss it for the next 45 minutes, and I'm going to be late doing what I have to do. And it drives me nuts. Yeah. All I can do, Michelle, is love you and pray for you. And we do. We have our own form of PTSD and dates. But I think when we talk about medication tomorrow, and we talk about the fundamentals of medication tomorrow, we're going to understand that sometimes the medication they give doesn't allow the body to go through the 5 steps of grief. Good morning, Stacy. It doesn't let us go through those 5 steps of grief, which everybody has to go through. And sometimes they give them medication that doesn't allow that. So I'm going to wrap up where we are on this vomiting this venom. You'll be less likely to vomit the venom if you talk about the stuff you're vomiting. But you can't talk about the stuff you're vomiting until you learn to talk. So we need to take a step back sometimes and just talk. Talk about the weather, talk about the trees, talk about the birds. Just do it. Yeah, and we're in each other's face all day. I think that 24/7 day makes it harder sometimes. That 24/7 day makes it harder because you get no support anywhere, and you're dealt to face it all the time. But learn the small steps in communication, and that will help with the spewing. I'm really talking about this because I spewed like a volcanic eruption last night. A volcanic eruption last night. And it was a mistake. I screwed up. I screwed up. I didn't listen, and I screwed up. Because I too had a what about me moment without realizing. I was wrapped up in what I was doing, and I didn't realize I was having my what about me moment and not letting him. So this topic was actually talked on today to let me understand. I learned more from talking about the subject than I ever did. We have to stop the spew. We can have conversations, we can have blow-ups, we can get mad, but we have to blow up. And he is really good at telling me this. What's the initial topic? Look, we could be talking about, I don't like the way you fold this pair of underwear, and the next thing we're talking about is, I don't like the way you breathe, and I don't like the way you walk, and I don't like the fact that you didn't do this, and I don't like... So literally, we can go from a general one-issue topic all the way around the block and around the country, and just talk. I can find stuff from everywhere that is off topic, and we never address the topic at hand. And you're right, Michelle. When you're spiritually and emotionally exhausted, it's easy to be angry and resentful. And we just have to... It's easier said than done that we have to do this, but we have to do this. You have to take your time. Because the truth is, he's still going to be in that place regardless of what you do right now. So you have to enjoy you. And I know that sounds shallow almost, but there's only so much you can do. You can lead that horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And you're spending all this time and energy researching why he's doing this, and we have pulled out every scenario. But I think when we get into the drugs tomorrow, all this stuff is going to make so much more sense. But I am famous for not sticking on topic, and that's when the volcanic eruption happens. If I would learn to address the issue at hand and not try to deflect it myself, we wouldn't get into this volcanic eruption. And we just bottle stuff up. So we need to go back to just talking. And that's where we're going to go, is back to just talking. So I hope this kind of made sense. Y'all know that we can't always talk to them, but we can always talk to each other. That's what we're here for. We are a community and we are a family and we are way bigger than this. Don't forget tonight, Stephanie going to talk about the good stuff and how they are learning to work through the volcanic eruption spewing. So excited. Yay, sister. Because I probably need to play that on massive replay. Tomorrow night we're going to do Let's Talk, 7 p.m. I'm excited for that. And there's a lot more great stuff coming up. And at least I'm kind of back on the program today. So I'm Stacy. Y'all have a blessed day. This has been Walking in My Shoes, and we are loving my veteran. Have a great day. Bye.